Thanks, Abby. Great to have you all today. I'm very excited to see so many of you. I think more people are joining by the minute. We've got a very juicy hour ahead of us. We're talking about money and money stress in life and in the workplace, which we all know is a very hot topic and a very meaty problem. And it's one that the three of us are very, very passionate about. I'm Lily Sussman. I'm your host today. As Abby said, I'm the Chief Strategy Officer at Wiser. We're an award-winning and purpose-led fintech based in Sydney. We're looking to reinvent money and the financial sector. And we are very passionate about financial health. We've recently launched the first money app that helps people with financial health through improving everyday money habits using psychology and applied science-based interventions that give us a fresh take on everyday money habits. And you're all here probably because you're aware of the soaring cost of living and know that it's something, it's hard to be sheltered from it fully. And you're also here because 1 in 3 employees in your organizations are feeling financial anxiety and it's affecting their performance at work. And almost half of the adults struggle with money stress. And the Australian Psychology Association cites money stress as the top stressor for Australians. And those of you coming in from abroad, this is a robust finding that's across OECD as well as RDE economies. So money stress is a big, big issue in our society. And financial difficulties are very much still shrouded in shame and secrecy and stigma. And people are facing difficult decisions about, how to manage money, how to live their lives. And employers often don't know how to help or where to turn or what to do, what interventions to roll out. And so we all kind of know it's a problem, it's an elephant in the room, but what do we do about it? And that's what we're talking about today. And for this live virtual panel discussion, we have brought together a great team of money and psychology experts, Rebecca and Tamar, who are going to bring their passion and expertise to share with us how we can all move beyond the existing stigmas, take control of our finances and our lives, and really start having very different conversations and taking different actions so that we can pave the way together for more financially healthy workplaces and in our own lives. So Tamar and Rebecca bring a wealth of insight and experience, and I'm going to have each of you introduce yourselves. So Tamar, do you want to kick us off?
Thank you. So I became an organizational psychologist because I felt that people should love their work. They should bounce out of bed excited about what they're going to do. And I think anybody who's had even the smallest little job knows that if you have a good boss, then work is fabulous. And so through my leadership coaching, as in simple terms, I help make people good bosses. But it's really about helping people have difficult conversations, manage challenging situations, motivate, inspire, find ways to help people find purpose in their workplace and enhance leadership. So I enhance leadership capability, emotional intelligence, and well-being. And you're very passionate about the role of reducing financial strain so that people can really enjoy their lives and enjoy their work.
Beautiful. Well, excited to hear your leadership coaching tips. Rebecca?
Thanks, Lily. My name's Rebecca. I'm a financial advisor by profession. I've spent 12 years of the majority of my working or professional life in financial planning and advice roles and product management. And I'm the co-founder and managing director of Money Happy. And Money Happy is a financial wellbeing partner to business for their employees. And we provide targeted financial wellness training via on-demand learning and professional one-on-one money coaching for your employees. And we founded Money Happy off the back of a really deep professional history and experience with what is it that, motivates people to stress or to de-stress and to change when it comes to the things that are going on in their lives around their finances. As a professional, as a financial planner, I spent a long time sort of working with people to sort of help them understand that, these were the steps or the gates that you could move through, if you like, in order to be financially successful, create wealth and get on track to achieving your goals, whatever they look like. But, you know, you could give 10, 20, 100 people the same set of gates to move through, or the same strategy, the same plan, and every single one of them would end up somewhere different. And the real explanation for that difference, you know, when it came down to it, was, of course, their own life experience and their journey, but also how they filtered those experiences, what lens they look at the world through when it comes to money and behavior with money and finances. And so we developed, you know, a coaching methodology that helps people to live the life they choose, de-stress, and, you know, get on track with their finances.
Awesome. A lot of expertise. So let's get into it. We won't hold anything back. So we're here today talking about financial and mental well-being in our lives and at work. And financial and mental well-being, we know, are inextricably linked, right? That's what the evidence says. And we know money is an important and unescapable part of life. So if it's not in balance, it can really, really stress us out and impact our well-being, and of course, impact how we show up at work and productivity. Rebecca, maybe you can get us started. Can you talk to us a bit about what this means for workplace well-being, and how do you think employee expectations have been shifting and changing around financial well-being?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, when it comes to workplace well-being and how financial stress is impacting people in the workplace, I mean, intuitively we know, and the research tells us too, that people don't leave their problems at home when they come to work. We know this about mental health, and it's true the same for financial health. And in fact, recent research by AMP has, you know, sought to put some statistics around, well, how much and to what degree are people bringing those money worries to work, and how is that impacting what they're doing day to day in their jobs. And the research suggests that it's over 12 hours a week on average is lost to presenteeism and absenteeism combined around financial stress in the workplace. So it's significant from a productivity perspective on the job. You know, I mean, but what avenue doesn't it touch when it comes to the impact on the business and the culture of the organization? We know that there's a link, as you said, Lily, between mental health and financial well-being. In fact, people who are dealing with financial challenges are twice as likely to experience or be experiencing a mental health event. We know it impacts retention as well when it comes to how people are dealing and struggling with their financial well-being at work. And we also know nowadays that from an attraction perspective, it's also influencing where and how people are choosing to work. And that leads me on to the next question you mentioned, Lily. How do you think employees' expectations are changing around financial well-being, being provided or supported inside the workplace? Through COVID, one thing we've seen is that people have changed their view on the world and work, and the role that work plays in their lives. And a lot of that comes down to work-life balance, but also a big part of that is, well, how is my employer supporting me as an individual, the whole person that comes to work? You know, once upon a time, it was more based on role and potentially just remuneration, but now it's how does working for this company fit with my work-life balance goals, with my flexibility, with my, you know, my views on how I want to contribute to the world of work and otherwise. And part of that focus on, or heightened awareness, if you like, of one's well-being has been this sort of increased awareness of financial well-being and the role that, you know, being happy, how they think and feel, whether they feel on track to their finances and their goals. You know, how is this role contributing to that or taking away from it? And then as in terms of benefits, what is there in place that's actively supporting me in that journey, or, you know, in order to reach those goals? WageStream just released some landmark research, one of the largest studies on financial well-being for the Australian workforce. And in terms of employee expectations, a lot came out of that. So it's a good place to start in terms of what are your employees thinking about when it comes to what they're looking for from a financial wellbeing perspective. The big thing that's changed is that there's a big disconnect between HR or leadership in terms of what supports and resources they believe to be available to employees versus what supports and resources employees themselves feel are available to them. So 58% of HR from that report believe that there was the support needed by employees versus only 36% of employees here in Australia feel the same way. And then when we look at what are their expectations around solutions being offered, 1 in 2 say they would think more favourably around an employer if they were offered or offering a financial wellbeing program or solution. And 1 in 2 also agree that they'd be more likely to remain with an employer where there was financial wellbeing support in place. So I think a lot has changed, expectations-wise, perceptions-wise, and it's undeniably an issue. Previously, it's been sort of intangible to some extent for people to sort of touch and feel, well, where is this problem? How big is it? And where is it showing up in my employees' lives and in the business, given their role that they play in our organisation? But there's a lot of, it's well supported in the literature now that there are issues and they're starting to come out, which is great. Even conversations like this is really good.
Yeah, thanks. I think we can all agree that expectations have changed, right? Employees are expecting more and to be taken care of. It's not just so transactional. You know, they want to be part of a workplace that has higher EQ and is taking care of their holistic well-being. And as we start out saying, you know, financial health is inextricably linked with mental health, and we know mental health is inextricably linked with physical health, and you know, it's a deep part of your well-being. But what you said that was very interesting was how there's a real gap between what HR departments think is on offer versus what employees think are on offer. And, you know, that's a very interesting puzzle because, you know, we started out talking about saying money is very stigmatized. It's not a thing that people feel comfortable talking about, sometimes even with family and friends, let alone their employers. So it can be hard on both sides. You know, how do you talk about this topic at work, and how do you even broach it even to say there are potential solutions? And this is where I might flip to you, Tamar. Can you tell us a little bit about what makes for a workplace that has a culture where people can talk about stuff that is quote unquote stigmatized, right? Money, stress being one of them. What happens in those cultures and what makes for those cultures versus a place where you can't talk about those, or it's just, ooh, you know, even if it should be talked about, it just feels too hard or not right for the culture.
Look, I think that's where we come to what we call a psychologically safe and healthy workplace. And it's, you know, to be really glib and simple, it's a place where people feel comfortable to be themselves and where everybody takes responsibility for those conversations. And so I think that it's around, you know, I'm often asked, well, Tamar, how do I talk to my staff about difficult topics? How do I address the elephant in the room? And I'm like, well, the first thing is work out why you're not addressing the elephant in the room. Are you feeling awkward? Do you not feel it's your place? Is it too sensitive a topic? Is it too onerous? Will you be too glib about it? And you don't really know what you're meant to do. You know, how I can't solve the world's problems. And so because of that, there's this people will shy away. And I think that when we look at something like financial strain, and we realize that it's not actually about how much money you've got in the bank. It's not about any objective measure of how much debt you've got, of your financial goals. It's how you feel about your financial situation. It's an individual assessment. And, you know, and it links back to some of the stuff Rebecca's talking about. A lot of the stuff around money, it's us. It's our unique role. And so when it comes to, well, what support do you provide to people, you need to have a relationship where if you're going to be talking to your direct reports as a leader, that you're always talking to them about things, that you often have one-on-ones in a private environment, where it's a bit of the, yes, what's going on at work, but a bit of the state of the nation, how you going, how you tracking type of conversations. If you don't normally do that, then you cannot start talking about pay. I think the other thing is that recognition that the leader may not be the best person to have this conversation. It could be a colleague, it could be someone in the HR department, it could be whoever. Everybody has, when you're reducing a stigma around a topic, then it's a whole of organisation attitude and comfort to be having those conversations. The hardest part, I think, is people always want to help and solve and give advice. But really what you're doing is you're noticing somebody needs help and you're directing them to the right source of help. The complexity with financial strain is all these things that go along with it. So yes, on the one level, there's the education and there's the type of work that both you ladies do with your different businesses. But on the other level, there's some things that go along with it that make things much more complicated. So whether it's the it's a bit of a, I'll just say go with it, whether it's a mental health issue, whether there's an increase in drinking, in smoking, in gambling, in what we'd call moonlighting, or someone's taken on another job, or their mother's really ill, or, their parents need them to pay their mortgage, or, there's a whole lot of things, some of which are financial, some are psychological. And so the role of the colleague, the boss, the organization is to be able to say, you're not yourself, and here are some professionals where you need to go to for help. And we're not letting in the charlatans. We're really looking at proper professionals who are in government, regulatory bodies, who know their expertise, and that's where the help's going to be. And also that we're creating an environment of kindness, literally. Because all the things that Rebecca was talking about that happen as a result of financial strain, they start to undermine, the more stressed people are, the less they engage in what we call these organizational citizenship behaviors, being kind, being altruistic, going the extra mile, showing up, chatting with your colleague about what they're working on, all the things that make work creative and lovely and interesting. And so there's also that mindfulness of the contagious effect of emotions within an organization. And so it's enabling those who can see, who have the self-awareness and the EQ to go, yeah, she's stressed and she's in a bad mood because this is going on. And I'm not going to belittle that, but I'm not going to catch that emotion. And I'm not going to have unrealistic optimism, but I'm going to allow my creativity on this new project or whatever it is, to shine. And I'm going to think about how we can bring things like that into the world of work. So, but I would say to the HR team and that data about the disconnect between what's available and what people know about. The HR team are the custodians of all the change that happens in an organization. And I honestly, there's a huge weight on their shoulders and there's a huge pressure to deliver so much and educate the organization with so much so quickly. And all this takes time. And it all, it's a gradual process and those champions that emerge within the organization, both from the senior leadership and then throughout the business, can help the HR team get their message out and all their good work to those who are really interested in it. Because I'm sure it's not through want of effort, that those discrepancies are there.
Yeah, absolutely. I thought it was really interesting when you said, you don't have to have the answer, right? You don't have to come with advice or try to solve the problem, but you do need to create an emotionally safe enough space where you can comfortably direct people to what's on offer, the solutions. Whereas you don't have to come with, you don't have to have this difficult conversation diving into someone's finances, which we know is stigmatized and awkward and, is hard to do. But what's the level? How do you create that emotionally, psychologically safe space where you can just, normalize it and then direct them to the resources that are there? And, I like what you said, which is like, if it's not part of the routine of connection in an organization, then, I mean, that's where it belongs, in the normal part of the routine and the connection. And, is there anything special or different about money versus, say, mental health, which is something I know, we've been working on over the years and rolling it out across workplaces, which also used to be quite a taboo topic, right? And money is like still in that category. It's like very misunderstood. We tend to think of it as about dollars and cents and math and numbers and financial literacy and all this complex financial money mathematical stuff, when in reality, and Rebecca, you referred to this, how lots of people can get same quote unquote financial literacy, but you're going to have completely different financial lives and different experiences and different levels of money stress, because financial health is just like any other area of health. It's about your habits and your behaviors and the psychology behind them, which is personal to your brain. Everyone has their unique set of behaviors and habits, which come from their own behavior chains and established patterns of thoughts and emotions in our brains. And what's interesting is, if we keep thinking of money as about financial stuff and math and numbers and, what's the right financial plan or what's the right next step, it's actually different for everyone. And it's actually about psychology, and it's actually about something different. And so in a way, it seems closer then to the mental health conversation than it is its own unique realm, the way we think about money. Would you guys agree with that? And do you think, the same ways we can, we use same tools, same skill sets we have to talk about mental health and struggles in general at work can just easily port over at work? What have you seen, Rebecca, in terms of, organizations that Money Happy works with that does it really, really well?
Well, I think you made an interesting point. You talked about the fact that money and conversations around finances and money are very emotional, a lot of the time. And there is a lot of psychology wrapped up in decision making around money, how we think and feel about what we set as goals, even are very personal and based on our own, thoughts about life and what we value and what's precious to us. So there's this, there's a very good book by a gentleman called Morgan Housel, and he wrote that if atoms had feelings, the study of physics would be taught very differently. So we tend to try to solve for these issues with information and tools. And we have lots of information and lots of tools to help us understand, get clear on where we are, what we're doing, what we're working towards, and maybe the steps that we need to take to get there. But what we don't understand, through no fault of our own, because it's not something that we're taught anywhere formally as part of any kind of educational process, whether it's, schooling specifically or any post-grad studies or even at work. Unless you work in psychology or you've studied psychology and have some basic understanding of behavioral finance, then you wouldn't necessarily know those things, and you would look at you compared with 3 other people standing next to you, earning the same amount of money, doing the same things from in terms of how much you're saving or trying to save, or where you live and what holidays you go on, and wondering where the difference is. Like, why am I different, or somewhere different in my life? So I think in terms of what we can take away from the success to date of the mental health approach in the workplace, one of the and specifically with success, I mean the breaking down of stigma that we have successfully sort of eroded to a certain extent. Not to say that that's not an ongoing journey, but we have made much more success so to date in doing that in that arena than we have with financial well-being. And one of the things, when it comes to the stigma around money, is this kind of societal view that our personal successes and personal failings are that they're personal, reflections on our own intelligence, on our own, abilities and capabilities. And so there is this, perceived personal deficit, if you like, that I'm not living up to XYZ, I'm not as good as compared to so-and-so. And so we sort of take it on board and personalize the outcome, when in fact, there's a lot of research that shows that the, financial events are sort of just that, they're events, and it's the filter or the lens through which we view them from a personal, psychological and brain perspective that determines the outcomes to some extent. So I think what we can take away from that is that, we as individuals, there's a lot going on internally from a psychological perspective that we, until we've learned about it and been shown the way and understand how we are viewing the world and understand how our personality and our habits and our attitudes and the money stories that we've grown up with are impacting our financial world and the decisions that we make, we can't really blame ourselves for, what's going on. I mean, there's a journey there. There's an internal, there's a lot going on internally, and yes, there's a lot going on externally too that changes the course of things. But if we understand that, just in the same way that the brain is involved in a lot of the conversation about mental health, the brain is also involved in a lot of the conversation around money. So in that way, if we teach people that, and that's part of what this broader definition of financial well-being needs to be extended to, we're essentially freeing people a little bit from that stigma, from the blaming or the perceived self-deficit, that somehow it's them that's the problem, but they're not operating with all the information that they need until they're made aware of those things.
I could not agree more with that. And you guys can probably see my background, this iceberg graphic, where money is the top of the iceberg, which is what we can see, right? In the social comparison that you talked about, this, my coworkers and I have the same jobs and we earn the same income, but why does it feel like my money situation is so different? Why do they have a house and I don't? Or, this person has, these fancy clothes, and, you can see this stuff above the waterline, and it looks like money, and we are very harsh on ourselves about it. We feel responsible, like it's our fault, or we flip back and forth between saying, no, it's not our fault, it's institutional, it's a system, versus it's being our fault. And in actuality, it's, what's driving what you see up top, and money is actually what's underneath, which is our habits and psychology, which is unique for every single person. And there is no one roadmap for everyone, but there is a roadmap that is about understanding your own psychology and evolving it and figuring out over the course of time what your deep values are, and then aligning your money habits, everyday spending, where the money's going, what your goals are, how you go about achieving them, what the everyday behavior looks like that ladders up to achieving goals. Everyday behaviors, what does that look like? That's our habits, and the behaviors that we do every day that have then the impact and the result on the money that people can see, or that we think we can see. And what's underneath is really our psychology, right? Which is going to be a personal and unique thing. So it's really not actually about traditional ideas of money. And in the workplace, it's similar to mental health, and we understand it's all unique. Everybody's got their own backgrounds. Everyone has their own families of origin that's shaped their brains and their psychology. And that absolutely has then had an impact on your behaviors in any realm of life, whether it's managing money or anything else. I mean, where is money going? It's going to everyday spending, right? And so, in the Wiser Today app, which is a digital kind of 5 minutes a day experience where you work on your habits and psychologies to achieve a change in your money, what we've really seen is that, it's actually 2 or 3 little habits that make a huge difference to your life. So because habits are typically on autopilot, it's how our brains are wired, it needs to conserve energy. So we've got to put habits on autopilot. We've all got money habits that are on autopilot that we don't really realize, and they're not necessarily aligned with our values. And sometimes that's the difference between where you want to go and where you're at. And to change that, or to figure that, or even to see that clearly, because things are on autopilot, it's hard to see what's underneath the waterline in the iceberg. You've got to go through a deliberate process. And as Rebecca, I was really agreeing with what you're saying, which is like, we're not taught this in school. The brain doesn't naturally look clearly at itself. It's very difficult to see your own psychology. And Tamar, you'd be an expert in helping people get more clarity on what they are doing, who they want to be, and how they then can get there. And I think that's the conversation about money that is actually really important, to take it out of the realm of dollars and cents and into the realm of what's going on in your life and helping people with their money psychology. And so I wanted to ask, it seems like even back when we thought money was, yeah, Tamar, jump in.
Yeah, look, I have a thing about the question you raised around conversations around mental health versus conversations around money in the workplace. And I think that there's this element of shame and embarrassment and loss of confidence that comes with an individual. I mean, most people have some sort of corporate budget, even if it's what we used to call petty cash, that they are responsible for. Everybody's got a bit of discretionary money that they can spend here and there. And there's this embarrassment of, well, if I can't get my home life, my personal finances under control, then they're going to second guess everything I'm doing in the workplace. And I better not tell anybody, and I better just, make sure that it's all on track. And there's a real fear. And I think the other thing is that because there is not discussion around salary, and in a lot of large firms, there's a policy that we will not discuss what people are paid. There are perceptions of equity when there aren't. And so, you look, well, Bill's flying first class. Well, maybe Bill's flying first class because he likes to mortgage to the hill, or because he's actually being paid more. And I think there's also a thing around variable pay. Variable pay is variable. It's not fixed. It's not guaranteed. And they've become cultures and some industries and people's financial planning, or there's just this perception of, I'm going to get that money. And then the trouble that goes on is that when an individual is feeling really distressed about all this, because how can you talk about what's going wrong when you should, et cetera, their performance goes down. And then they're not making the mark to get the bonus, if the bonus, is a transparent thing. And then they're not feeling that they're going to be in a position to apply for a promotion because their performance has dropped, and it becomes a cycle. And so you're not going to talk to anybody at work about the fact that, yes, we're all going for drinks on Friday, but you really can't afford to shout anybody. You're just going to shout them and add your credit card debt, and you're not going to ask to be reimbursed for a company expense or for a company credit card, so you don't have the awkwardness of the reimbursing. And, please fund my electricity bill because I've been working from home. You're not going to do all of that, because all of that will have that flow on repercussion of, God, you can't do some basic maths. You can't, manage your stuff. Are there issues within your personality and your understanding? And so I think that extra complexity, and I don't think we've got to the point of, really understanding that your disposable income has nothing to do with your experience of financial strain. That it's not a dollar figure. It's not about the amount of money in your bank. It's about your personal feeling around how much financial stress you're under, because you ladies would know, some people want the nest egg for the rainy day, and some people, want it for now and are comfortable with different levels of debt and different levels of savings. But there's this perception that you earn the big bucks, you should be comfy, and you earn the same as everyone else, you should be able to do, and all of that adds to that shyness and the discomfort and the stigma. And it's, I think, conversations like this that start to bust the myths are a first step to helping people be much more comfortable about having these conversations. And there's one group of people that I really want to bring up, and I think this is another elephant in the room that's never raised, and it's very delicate, and that's where there's financial abuse. So that's in a domestic violence situation where there's financial abuse, and where you've got a person sitting there who doesn't see their salary and has no control over their personal finances, and they're showing up to work and they've got that all going on as well. And that's like, it's a really, I don't know, I know it's probably not the right time in the conversation, but it's a real elephant in the room, and it's a really tricky one, and it's really delicate. And it's also about what extra support you give that individual, but it's an awareness that that's going on too for people. That there's all, you know, that's one of those sort of compounding variables that also then makes these conversations really awkward and really uncomfortable and delicate and quite private. So sorry that.
Yeah.
Oh my God, I have to.
We're getting great feedback on the chat. You know, thanks for raising awareness of financial abuse, and just especially among women. There is such a big stigma. There really is a big stigma, and I think in a way the money conversation is just a couple of years behind the mental health conversation, right? It used to be like massive shame and guilt. You know, if I'm feeling anxious, depressed, like I can't cope, like, you know, I've got headaches, I'm absent from work, I'm, you know, having struggles, real life struggles, which we all now, thankfully, I think are on the road toward normalizing, because it's literally all of us struggle at one time or the other. It's the same thing with money stress, right? And it doesn't matter how much money you make, because yeah, you're in a job, so you're making similar to other people in the organization, but it's like you might be feeling really stressed, and there could be a lot of reasons for that, right? It's going to be here, you know, underneath the iceberg. What's happening in your brain and your thoughts and emotions, what's triggering those in your environment, and the habits that you have on a daily basis. Are they relieving that, not relieving that? You know, are they helping you with your money or not? And are they exacerbating the stress? And that's very much a personal, emotional issue. And it's part of the bring your whole self to work, you know, goal that we're trying to achieve together, which is how do you support a person that is employed? You know, how do you support ourselves and each other at work? And that's to go through anything, whether it's money or anything else. But recognizing that money is particularly associated with guilt and shame, precisely because it's so stigmatized and hidden and all under the surface, right? And there's actually not much out there to support the average person. That's why, you know, we've spent the last 2 years trying to run at this problem and build Wiser Today and try to use tech to solve the problem, because we just saw, you know, the whole financial sector is designing financial products and services. They're not designing for financial health. So if you're struggling with financial health and money stress, well, guess what? The solution's underneath the waterline. It's, you know, at the iceberg layer, but what's going to help you with that, right? And so, you know, Rebecca, you work with people every day, like in-person coaching, helping people with that. Tamar, I'm sure this comes up in your coaching, you know, all of us that work with people and recognize that it's a people problem and a psychology issue at the core, which everybody deserves help with and should not be stigmatized in the same way that mental health should not be stigmatized, because we were not born with perfect knowledge of our brains and how we could improve them, you know, and help ourselves build healthy habits that actually help us align our money with our values and change autopilot everyday habits. That's just not out there. That's not the conversation that we've had, right? And, you know, someone just, that's so true. We need to have a positive relationship with money. It's true. And if we keep thinking of it as like something, it's like keeping up with the Joneses, milestones you have to hit, or anything external rather than internal, you know, or something we're responsible for, or something that we completely blame the system for. Either way, like there's not a understanding of what's real agency and what you can do versus not. And so I think healthy financial health, it's like, it's this brand new topic, right? That we're just starting to kind of lift the veil on. It feels very hazy. Like, what is money? You know, what is it really?
I was just going to say, Lily, I think on that, because you sort of touched on being able to or what can we do? How can we facilitate conversation? How can we give people the chance to, to open up, to start dialogues, and I know we've talked a lot about money in the last 40 minutes, and we tend to use financial well-being and financial stress interchangeably, right? But if we can just zoom out and expand the lens through which we look at this issue, and then from a problem-solving perspective say, well, financial stress is one facet of a broader issue, which is promoting or improving financial well-being. And absolutely, we need to ensure that there are the right solutions and supports, and then the language internally at an organizational level, at a cultural level, to facilitate signposting for those people who are in those predicaments and facing those very stressful and horribly, horrible situations. But, when there are the other issues of, promoting financial autonomy, and then promoting financial, growth and mindset, which, what we can do in those spaces is take a more proactive approach as well. So one of the things I say is that at some point we have to stop just pulling people out of the river downstream and start creating systems and solutions that are there to support the rest of the workforce who are potentially not there at that end of the financial well-being spectrum, let's say, but we can prevent a lot of that by hopping in and dealing with what we know are the challenges at this stage, which are things like, a general dissatisfaction with being able to manage day-to-day finances, and insecurity or anxiety about financial security in the short, medium, and long term. So whilst not technically, a dire financial situation that requires emergency intervention, like some of the supports that have previously been available inside the workplace via EAPs, for example, there is this whole other part of the workforce that is under stress, moderately or severely, but doesn't fit that particular situation, where we could intervene with the right tools and services. And so, in terms of creating a dialogue and a culture for those people who are more receptive to being able to discuss it at a peer-to-peer level or with their managers, what could be more fundamental and intertwined with life than money and financial events? So every major life event has a financial event attached to it. So whether it's buying a home, entering the workforce, buying a car, getting married, having children, retiring, all those kinds of things, money is a part of the decision-making involved in that life stage. So, if we are able to, work in and communicate, and people communicate freely on those things anyway. They come to work and say, oh, we're not looking at houses again, Saturday, it's a punish. I'm trying to get my loan paperwork in, and oh, we nearly missed out on this because the deposit wasn't enough, or gosh, the cost of a wedding's gone up so much these days, or the honeymoon got cancelled and I didn't have insurance, and now what do I do about that? And so there are lots of, we talk about these things all the time. So it's really just a means of marrying up the solutions that are available to support people who may want advice and guidance during those times to make decisions that are going to be the most beneficial for them in that stage, and potentially put them on one or another of paths that they may not have been on had they not had that help. And I mean, that can, from a practical perspective, that can be made available through whatever existing channels there are. So, take HR, for example. They, if you're applying for a loan, you need a few pay slips. You might have lost them, you have to request them, and then, oh, you're looking for a home. Did you know we have XYZ, blah, 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 blah. This could be helpful to you. So it really can be that natural and that integrated. But I think because we've sort of looked at financial well-being traditionally through a very narrow lens, and sort of looked to solve and talk about just stress and hardship, that we're not actually picking up on the opportunity within organizations to address the bigger chunk of people's teams that are looking and needing help too.
Absolutely. And I just saw a question in the chat, or a comment in the chat from Michael, who said, things aren't built for the average person. we've seen great improvements in financial counseling for people in distress, but what about, everybody, the 50% of Australians who cite that their top stressor is money stress? And what about, everyday rising cost of living? And what we've seen through, launching the Wiser Today app is it's absolutely the everyday that is where the stress comes from. And every day, and what people want to work on, they've got bigger goals, but what they want to work on is everyday habits. The top habits being like, help me figure out why am I, how can I reduce takeout? It's a habit. How can I reduce buy now, pay later use? It's a habit that just keeps getting me into trouble. I feel like I dine out too much on a weekly basis. I kind of do it mindlessly. What about online shopping? And working on one habit at a time can make such a huge difference. And, it's not something that's for the financially distressed, it's for everybody, because actually, we all got everyday habits and our money is all going somewhere. And the way we're thinking about money is also kind of hidden underneath service. It's hard to see how we're doing it. And so bringing that into the light and getting 5 minutes of coaching a day and, engaging with deeper coaching like Money Happy provides, using tools like Wiser Today. There's so many things I think that are emerging because there's more and more of a sort of, I guess, a Venn diagram, overlapping Venn diagram between healthcare and money, and that's what, in my mind, financial health is. Because when I think, us talking about this, as you said, talk about it in terms of well-being, not just distress and wellness. I mean, in health, we all know to manage our health, we've got to eat better or, not stop smoking, make behavioral changes every day. And it's no different with financial health, right? But historically we've treated money like it's like, oh, just, give people more information and resources and tools, have people learn about how to manage their finances. Well, that's like having people learn about, giving somebody a budget is like giving somebody a calorie budget for the day. You're like, well, this is how many calories you should eat. And this is what healthy eating looks like. And this is what nutritional food is. Well, guess what? You can learn all of that, know that, and then not be able to eat differently very easily. It's hard to eat healthy and eat that way, right? Because doing that is actually about behavior change. And behavior change is about your habits and psychology. And you've got to actually look at behavior change, which is personal to you and your life. And the same thing with money habits, right? So if we just focus on financial literacy and all the way historically we've been talking about money, whether it's in the workplace or in our culture, like it's just about, oh, just learn what crypto is, or just learn how to invest, or just learn how much you should be saving. That's a start, but it's by no means enough to actually help people deeply with financial health. It requires behavior change and a deep engagement with psychology and with the drivers of behavior. And so I think, what we've talked about today here, and Tamar, let's have you jump in on that too, is really about changing that underlying understanding of money so we can start treating it differently in the workplace. Tamar?
Rebecca, when you took a quote from my favorite book, which is sort of in my pile over there, Upstream by Chip Heath and Dan Heath, I think that what's really interesting is that the well-being conversations in the workplace haven't yet got to we still haven't got to the preventative stage. I talk to my clients about what are your well-being not negotiables? What are the things, and I think we need to even go one step further in the preventative stuff, because there are those employees who are sitting around going, well, my money's fine, I'm fine at the moment, but oh golly, I don't want to be where they are. And heck, I'm one of these, these people, what can I do to prevent, like I do with my physical health, like I'm doing with my general well-being. And so what could be really delightful is that if these conversations around money actually, we want them to rush ahead also with mental health, but they get to that early stage prevention thing. And it's, well, how do we get it into schools? How do we get it into conversations early on in people's lives of, yes, life will happen, but how can you minimize the likelihood of those events causing you undue stress. And you know, when I say I make people good bosses, because if you've got a good boss, it buffers what's going on around you. And I love working with the newly promoted leaders because I love helping them stay who they are as individuals as they help their teams to grow. And I think that it will be a really interesting, you know, watch this space as the conversations within organizations and even, you know, within individuals and all the people attending this webinar, you know, how they take this forward and they start to bring it into our society. As yet, let's talk about this and let's see what we can do to make the lives of people great, you know. Someone in financial services said to me once, Tamar, people work really hard for their money. They should have great lives. I'm like, yep. Yeah, that's true.
Here, right? Here. It's just so hard because like it's hidden, right? All this beneath the iceberg stuff. You know, I am mindful that we've only got a couple minutes left. So, you know, to summarize, kind of, I want to give everybody practical takeaways. You know, if you've come here today and you're thinking, well, you know, what am I walking away with? My new, fresher understanding of money. How do I understand it differently? How do I have a different conversation at my workplace and in my life about it? And how do I be a coach to leaders in the organization about having a different conversation about money, understanding that it's just part of overall stress? What would you say, you know, maybe start with you, Tamar, like your top tips are for top takeaways?
I think the top takeaway is don't be afraid. Be proactive. That if you have a focus on not being judgmental all the time, really listening to what another person is saying, and remember that your role in all these situations is not to fix. It's really to help somebody get some help, and they may never tell you if they've got help. And to not be bothered by that, and to just keep encouraging. And I think when it also comes to any sort of behavior change, if someone says, I'm working on X, Y, and Z, to say to them, do you want me to keep you accountable? Do you know what will keep you accountable? And have also that self-awareness. And I think this is also an organizational level. Everybody's been through a whole lot of change. We know that it's 2 steps forward and it's 1 step back. And then something comes along and it throws a curveball, and to allow everybody to have permission for all those circumstances to go along. And that mindset around money and around behavior change associated with money and reducing stigma is what will enable people to be able to be much more comfortable and to open up and to allow time for this to shift into general dialogue and general conversation within workplaces. You know, it's not going to happen overnight. There was a question around job security in the Q&A. I think organizations have a huge responsibility to be transparent and to say, we don't know what's happening next. We know our industry is under strain. Even that is some information, because employees need to feel that they're part and they're valued and they're part of what's going on, and that they're people, not just a number on the balance sheet that could just get crossed out to, you know, make the budget better. You know, it's quite it's a unfortunate decision that gets done. Yeah. That's sort of a long psychology answer.
Thank you.
I would say, you know, as a practical takeaway, something for organizations to take away, is to look as a company or as a business at how you are defining financial well-being. If you are looking at this from a strategic positioning, which it is, you know, internationally, financial well-being is well recognized as a strategic lever in terms of people strategy and general well-being strategy. But the reason that that's important, and we can link that back to the research, is that we're looking at this disconnect, as we say, between what employees perceive to be available as in terms of meeting their needs and what employers perceive to be available to them to meet those needs. So for me, you know, and Tamar made a beautiful comment before that it's not through a lack of, or, you know, a want of trying to match, needs. Businesses do recognize it's an issue. It's the how, how can we do this? But a big part of that disconnect can be explained by the fact that if we look at what the needs are that are coming through in the research, and we look at traditionally what has been offered in terms of the solution via employee benefits, they're not meeting the need. So, things like superannuation and salary sacrifice arrangements don't help people address their cost of living concerns and the immediacy of their short-term, medium-term financial security. So if those are the things that are driving, poor financial well-being, then those are the things that we need to address from a supports and solutions perspective. In which case, I dare say that there would be less of a disconnect and more of a cohesive, agreement that everyone is being met, And so if we go back to this definition and what we've spoken about and say that, well, rather than just to say that financial well-being is addressing financial stress, and let's say, no, let's look at the preventative, the proactive approach we can take, so that whatever we do stretches to the majority of our workforce, then we have the ability then to be able to help deliver solutions that are in need. And we are going to better meet needs and help people ultimately from an individual perspective and also from an organizational perspective in terms of the benefits that a healthier, more improved financial well-being workforce can deliver.
Absolutely, couldn't agree more. And thank you so much. We're out of time, but I think we can all agree that very grateful to Tamar and Rebecca for sharing their time with us. Thank you, Abby from Unmind. We got the technical issues sorted. I hope this was a interesting and juicy conversation. That's going to be a conversation starter for all of you in your organizations. Thank you so much for joining us today. It was lovely to have you and to spend time together.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks for having me. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you, guys.